Yeah. All right. So the Gemara was asking why, according to Rabbi Yehuda, are there not two stands? Is there only one individual stand? And the Gemara says that the reason for this is at first because there's going to be a confusion. There's going to be a confusion according to Rabbi Yehuda. Which stand is for the bull and which is for the goat, and therefore by having one, that's going to be better. And the Gemara and it was says, so why don't you just put a note on it? And it's like, right, this one's for the bull, this one's for the goat. It won't be confusion. So the Gemara says, well, nobody reads signs. Nobody reads signs, right? The Gemara says, we'll prove that from the fact that in regards to the stands by the Beis Hamikdash, the Rabbi Yehuda said that there were tzedakah boxes for the coins that they delivered. We saw this in Shkalim, right? They had 13 boxes, and for the birds, they didn't. Rabbi Yehuda said you can't have the bird boxes for the obligatory ones and for the donation ones. The donation ones being the two olas, and the obligatory birds, one is an ola, one's a chatas, and they may get confused. To which the Gemara says, no, actually there, Rabbi Yehuda in the Brisa says clearly that there are 13 tzedakah boxes, 13 of these donation boxes, of which each one had a sign saying, this one's for these kinds of birds, these are for these kinds of birds, these are for the new coins, these are for the old coins, these are the 6 general donation boxes. So clearly signage works, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and they would separate boxes for everything, and yet for the birds there were no you couldn't have the 2 different bird boxes there. So what's the reason? So he was not afraid. So the Gemara then said, you know what? He's not afraid about the donation box of bird box and the obligatory bird box being confused, or rather within the obligatory box he was concerned about a problem, a mix-up happening. What would happen? Everybody would give that is obligated in the 2 birds would put their coins in, and then one of them would die. And that coin for the chatas of the one that died is invalid, because the halacha is that a chatas has to have an owner because it's a sin offering. It's an atonement for the owner. The owner's dead. That's an invalid korban. So now you have within this box of maybe 50, 100 coins, you have one coin that's invalid, and that's why he says you can't bring boxes. You can't put it in boxes. Everybody has to bring their own coin and directly purchase the bird and give it to the coin, because if they put it into a box and of that box we're going to take the coins, that's going to be a problem, because actually if that person dies, now we have an invalid coin in the box, and all of them are going to now be invalid. So yesterday we ended up with the question, why don't we say brera? Brera is the concept of retroactively defining something as for what it is. And we explained that in this particular case, brera is a possibility because when the person dumps their coins in the box as for their obligation, it's not that particular coin that's theirs. It's not like, okay, whose coin is this? Let's take fingerprints. Let's check for some DNA samples. Yep, we found so-and-so's DNA on this. It's their coin. No, of course not. Rather, it goes into the mixture and it becomes nondescript. Any one of these coins can be for any one of those people, and the coin would just take out 2 coins. Okay, person number A needs, here's theirs. And then they take another 2 coins, any of those 2 coins, person number B needs the 2 birds, here's theirs. So since it's nondescript, and therefore it can be anybody's, when later on one of those people dies, and it now becomes an invalid coin, it's not any one particular coin, and it's not even their coin. It's just one coin there is not valid. So then later, let's just say, okay, we're going to take one of these coins out, toss it into the Dead Sea, let it corrode. That coin is invalid, and that represents that person, and then the rest of them can be used. Why don't we say brera? That's why brera would be a possibility here, and the question is why we don't offer that as an option. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda les le breira. And that's when we ended. The last line in Nun Hey on the base, 55b. The Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of breira ever. We don't have this idea of retroactive a retroactive definition of a halachic matter. Minola, how do we know that Rabbi Yehuda does not have breira? Ilay mimaha. Would you say it's from here? It's not, as we learned. Halakeach yayin mibein hakusi. Somebody goes and buys wine from the marketplace before there was a prohibition of buying wine that hadn't been washed the entire time. And now he buys this wine that has for sure the owner had not taken tithe, teruma, maaser. So he now is going to take them himself, but he wants to be able to drink from this flask or whatever it is, and he doesn't have other vessels to separate it out into. So what can he do? So it's Erev Shabbos and Chashech. It's too close to Shabbos. He can't separate out. So what he's going to do is, he can just stand there and designate within this barrel, within this jug, the teruma and the maaser. And he says, Shnei lugin shani asid lahafrish. 2 lug, say one measure, right? Whatever this measure is, 2% of the total is teruma. Says 2% of this is teruma. Shani asid lahafrish, that I'm going to eventually separate. It's still in the mixture here. 2% is going to be harehen teruma. They are teruma, the first separation that goes to the kohen. Asara, now on nun vav am an aleph, 56a. Asara, and then 10%. Maaser Rishon, going to be the first tithe. And so I'm going to separate that too. Later, right now, we're going to leave it where it is. It's still going to be a part of that mixture. And Tisha and 9% of the original total, another 10% after I've removed 10%. Maaser, that's going to Maaser Sheni, that's going to be the second tithe. And then he can transfer that onto coin, and he can drink it right away. Now, even though that what he's transferring onto a coin is the second tithe, the first tithe, that 10% is still in there. The 2% of teruma are still in there. So there's still a mixture of tithe and non-halachically edible juice, wine, in that barrel. Fine, but for the rest of Shabbos, he's going to take some out, and the last, when he has a chance, somewhere by the last 10-15%, he's going to take that out and say, okay, this is the teruma, this is the maaser, and all is well. But Shosimiane can drink it right away. Rabbi Meir, that's Rabbi Meir's opinion. Basically, later on, retroactively defining that which he halachically defined as the teruma and the maaser, which is breira, the ability to later define retroactively what my statement was today. In other words, I'm non-definitively saying there's teruma maaser in here, but anywhere in there, right? It's in the mixture somewhere, and later on I'll define today's pronouncement, today's action, and that's breira. Now we go to 56b, Nun Vavam and Beis. The rest of this is all Tosfos dealing with the great extent of where Breira applies and where it doesn't apply, and the distinctions between Breira. Breira is a huge topic that comes up a lot in defining where and how it applies. So Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon, they disagree, and they say you cannot do this. It's not sufficient. Alma ain't Breira. The reason for that must be because Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yossi are of the opinion you cannot do Breira. There is no such thing as a retroactive definition of your statement. It has to be distinct and clear at the moment of your statement what it is that is affecting, that is being affected, and retroactively there is no concept of Breira. You cannot say. The Gemara says, who says that's the meaning? That's the reasoning there. Mimai Dilma Shiny Hasam Kediktani time. Maybe a
Okay.
Rabbi, we're not hearing you. Been silent.
Hello? Is that better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, that's correct. So it's not a retroactive Eruv. It is it's conditional whenever he is. And so it's not brera, a retroactive definition of what was or should have been, but rather what actually is. Okay, so now this is a good source for Rabbi Yehuda not having having brera. And so that's why he says, don't put out a box for the birds. Great. So why did we bring up this whole conversation? Because we were trying to figure out, why does Rabbi Yehuda say not to have two separate stands, one for the goat blood and one for the bull blood, but rather one stand where you put the basin on, and then when you bring the other basin, you swap them out, but you're always holding one basin, you only have a single stand. And we said, oh, the reason is because he says nobody reads signs, and the Kohen Gadol is not going to read the sign, and he's going to mix them up. And we said, actually, that's not the reason, and we proved it, and we explained the reason over there by the birds was a different reason. Brera, fine, whatever. That was a tangent just to explain why that this is not Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning. But back to our question. So now that we understand that Rabbi Yehuda does say signage works, putting up a sign and people read the sign. So then why what are we afraid of? Put two stands, one for each basin, and he has a large basin full of the bull's blood. He takes it into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. He spritzes. He comes out. He puts it down on the stand. Goes out. Does the goat's the goat's blood, the goat's shchita. Then brings the blood into the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He spritzes one up and seven down. Brings that out, and now he has to spritz of the bull's blood onto the peruches, onto the curtain on the outside, which we're about to see. So make another stand so he can put the goat's blood down and easily, properly take the bull's blood. What are we afraid of? That he's going to take the wrong one? Yeah, just put a sign. This is for the bull's blood. This is for the goat's blood. And Shalom HaYisrael, there'll be no mistakes. The hashta, the amrina. Now that we said the Rabbi Yehuda in brera, that there's no brera, there's no retroactive definition, and that's the reason why he says by the birds, you don't make a special back for the birds. Hakasiva, islay, but writing a sign is sufficient and valid, and it'll work. Yom Kippurim Nami Nemetre. So on Yom Kippur as well, let him make two stands. Menichtav alayu, and then let him write on the two of them. So the Gemara says no, Mishum Chulsha the Kohen Gadol Lava, because he's fasting. He hasn't slept all night, right? They kept him up all night, studying and reviewing and snapping in front of him if he was falling asleep. And he's fasting, and he's got a lot of work to do. And it's not easy. I mean, it's easy to talk about, but he's to change clothing and do this part of the service, that part of the service, shecht a bull, bring a basin full of the blood in, carry the coals and the incense in, do all the work. I mean, it's tiring. So he may be a little bit not focused and take the wrong basin. So yes, usually people read instructions, and usually the Kohen Gadol would be very careful to do it right. But he's fasting, tired, and that causes, that's no coffee and no sleep is a good recipe for a mistake. Now, and the reason I can prove this to you is because if you wouldn't say this, I have some basic questions here. The amount of blood you get from a bull and the amount of blood you get from a goat is going to be a little bit different. They look different. The amounts are different. How is he going to mix those up? Not because he didn't read the sign, because the sign's there, and not because you can't tell the difference. You could tell the difference. Clearly, it's because he's tired and hungry and weak, and that's why. Because if you don't say that, even without writing the sign, he would know the difference between the two. Oh, hi, Nafish. This one is more, but hi, Zuter, and this one is less. And so you're going to say, well, maybe not. Maybe he's not receiving all the blood of the bull. They just took, I don't know, half a gallon's worth, and then the same for the goat, and so they're the same amount. Actually, not true. And if you're going to tell me, Rabbi Yehuda said, the Kohen Gadol, when he shechts, Makabel, he receives the blood, and he needs to receive all the blood of the bull. Shenamar says, it says in the pasuk, all the blood of the bull he has to pour to the mizbeach. Now we saw earlier in the Gemara limited that to some degree. It doesn't have to be what comes out of the muscles and the capillaries and so on, but whatever is coming out of the veins, in other words, whatever is being pumped out in the initial pumping, meaning not as it's being drained by hanging, but whatever is coming out, got to go into the basin, and he's got to bring that in. So that's a lot. And it says, all right, maybe at this point some of it has been spilled out, and therefore they look too much, the amounts look alike. No. Still, the blood color is different. One is redder, one is whiter, so they're not the same. Ella, so what's the reason we're concerned that he may make a mistake? Because of the weakness of the Kohen Gadol, how weak he is today, he's just not going to take notice, and he's going to make a mistake. Therefore, he says, even if you write a note, it's not going to make a difference. Therefore, the best way, according to Rabbi Yehuda says the best way to do this is to have one single stand where whatever he has in his hand, he's swapping out. And that's better. Now the odd thing about the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda here is that he's making it much harder to, when you have a basin of blood. I mean, we're not talking about a small amount. It's a lot. When he has a basin of the bull's blood, and now he has to put that down and pick up the goat's blood, or vice versa, and he has to do that off of one stand. So he has to basically hold both and put one down while he's holding the other one and lifting the other one up. If we're worried about the Kohen Gadol being weak and not being able to do it, that's also a problem. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying, so that's the opinion of the Chachamim. The Chachamim is saying, no, you need two stands because he needs to be able to put it down and he needs to be able to take that. And he's not going to make a mistake because he's swapping them out. So put one down here and take the other. And Rabbi Yehuda is more concerned about a cognitive, a mental weakness than a physical weakness. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Yes, it's going to be harder, but he can do that. He'll be able to do it, but he can't. But he's not going to focus on which one is, which one. So it's best to have it on one stand. And the Chacham say, no, the weakness of the Kohen Gadol is worse, making him hold and switch. The physical weakness is going to be, the fatigue is going to be more than the mental fatigue, than the mistake. Somebody came in front of Rava and was teaching. So this was something that you would do in the academy, and they would have a teacher. Somebody would repeat the teaching, the learning. So he said like this. Omar, he said, Yatza, the Kohen Gadol would come out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, v'nicha al kan sheni, and he would put it on the second stand, shebehechal, that was in the hechal, in the chamber. So that's the opinion of the Chachamim, right? That there's two stands, not just Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, that there's a single stand. Natal dam hapar. And then he would take the bull's blood, v'niach dam hasoyer, and put down the goat's blood. Now, normally he wouldn't be holding both. He would not take the bull blood and put down the goat blood. or rather he first put down what he has and then go get the other if you have two stands. Whose opinion is it that you first have to lift up and take the bull's blood and then you can put down the goat's blood? That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that there's only one stand, that you first have to pick up one and then the other. So he said, he put it down on the second stand, then he's going into language that indicates Rabbi Yehuda that he has to first pick up the basin that's there in order to put down the other basin. Amar Le, so Rabbi responded to him, Chadek Rabbanim, Chadek Rabbi Yehuda. The first language you say that there's two stands for the basins is the opinion of the Rabbanim. And then and then you said he has to take what's there and then put down the one he's holding. That's language that's apropos for Rabbi Yehuda. Ema rather say it the other way around. So he put down the goat's blood and basin because that has its own stand, and they went over to the other stand and took the bull's blood. Okay, so that's the end of the explanation of the two stands, and the basis for Rabbi Yehuda is simply a mistake, a cognitive mistake, being that he hasn't slept and he hasn't eaten and he's weak, he may make a mistake. So rather, and not have two stands. The Chacham is saying, no, it's better to have two stands. You're not going to make a mistake, and it's too hard to do it on one stand. The next step is he would now take the bull's blood again, which he had already taken in that basin into the Kodesh HaKodashim and spritzed over there once upwards and 7 downwards. And we said that means all the same, but his palm is up and down. And now he's going to do the same thing and spritz at the curtain on the outside. And so too shall he do in the tent of meeting space, where he's going to do the same spritzing on the outside. In the same manner and the same way that he spritzes inside the Holy of Holies and the inside of the inside, the inner chamber. So too he would do it in the outer chamber, meaning the Kodesh, the Beis HaMikdash itself, against the same way, right? So over there, what he did was he spritzed towards the Aron, towards the ark, but in front of it. So too he would do on the outside. And just as on the inside he did 1 upward and 7 downward, as we talked about yesterday, and that it means that his finger is upward, his hand is upward, and his hand is downward, but he's really spritzing to the same spot. First he would do of the bull, so too he'll do the same thing in the Heichal, in the Beis HaMikdash, facing the curtain. And just like in the inside he did was set 1 up and 7 down midam asar of the goat, so too he would do in the Heichal, in the Kodesh. So he comes out with the bull's blood, he puts it down. He goes and does the goat, and he brings that basin inside the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodashim, and he would spritz one up and 7 down. And then he brings that basin out, and he goes back to he puts that down on the second stand, takes the bull's basin from the first stand, and now he's going to spritz again, 1 upward and 7 downward, and at the curtain, towards the curtain. And then he's going to put that down, and he's going to do the same for the goat's blood. And what's the reason for spritzing on the outside if he already spritzed on the inside? And the pasuk says, "But he will atone for the tumah that Bnei Yisrael brought into the holy spaces." So, if somebody by mistake came in while tamei into the Kodesh or the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Beis HaMikdash, so this atones for it. And any sins that they do, and so will he do for the temple, for the Beis HaMikdash. For the one who dwells with them in the midst of their tumah. So Gemara says, even when Bnei Yisrael are sinning and even when we sin, and even when we are tamei, nevertheless, Shekhinah is with us. Gemara says, Amalei Ahumina. It was early Christians. This is a big Christian thing. They say, you know what? We can't get atonement because we're sinners and we're tamei and we don't have the Beis Hamikdash and we don't have God with us. So you need somebody to die for your sins. That's the only way you're going to get cleansed, right? So this early Christian said to Rabbi Hanina, well, the Rabbi Hanina now in Nun Zayin Amid Aleph 57a, Hashta Brei Tamei. For sure, you're all tamei. You're all impure and sinners. So and you, it says about you, it says about the Jews that their impurity is clearly on their garments. It's like with them all the time. So how are you going to get atonement for it? Amalei said, yeah, it's true, but nevertheless, see what it says about us. That Hashem, the Shekinah, dwells with us even in the midst of our sins, in the midst of our impurities. Shekinah sharuya b'neihem. The Shekinah is with them. Well, as Hashem will continue.